really had a funding source yet. The proposal is to fund those through the American Rescue Plan. What that will also do is the $5.5 million that is allocated in SPLOST can be used to maintain our buildings, which we have not had a funding source for previously. I think it also aligns with your Green Augusta initiative to make sure that we make the city greener and we reduce our power cost. We do have to provide, so you have had pricing in place for a little bit over a year now, but funding has not been allocated. And so by year's end, we do have to provide a non-binding letter of intent to make sure we don't get repriced. I think that's very important, because if we don't do that, everything that from employee wages all the way through construction costs, materials, logistics have all increased based on the pandemic. And so we want to avoid that. In addition to that, because we would be leveraging the rescue plan in year one, those SPLOST funds, we would, again, alleviate pressure from them, with the exception of the design fees for Craig Halton, I believe, is what that 325 is for. We would be able to implement those facility preservations and upgrades with very minimal impact on the SPLOST if you so chose. We've talked a little bit about, we're calling it quick strike, but I mean, truthfully, it is just improved maintenance in Augusta. The proposal is to allocate a total of $3 million. 500,000 of that would go to the DDA, again, funded by the rescue plan, and you'd be able to do that over 2 years. In addition to that, the allocation for the improvement of maintenance that we discussed at length all the way back, I believe it was September 21st, or at our work session where we received insight from the commission. The decision that has been made in the proposed budget is to augment the Augusta engineering department, because we decided to go with a contract model. They have a variety of standby contracts that allow them to respond quicker than anyone else, as well as they have been underfunded. I believe the commission has noted for at least the last 3 years, if not further. And so by providing them adequate funding, everything from the right-of-way maintenance, I think the director and I have talked about going from a 6-week schedule to a 4-week schedule, being able to have on-call contractors. So if you have a sidewalk broken, a pothole, or illegal dumping, I think in District 4 recently we had a emergency tire dump that we had to respond to. So all of those things will be bundled under here. And so there's an infrastructure there, but it has not been appropriately funded, and so it would be funded. I think the other great thing about that is when we look at the projected funding, while we would allocate it all within this year, it would allow the director to have this funding source all the way through 2024 when it actually expires. In addition to that, it relieves pressure on the stormwater fund to make sure that we have more access to projects and services within that fee. And again, it helps us increase our level of service significantly. With that, those are the areas for which you asked me to bring back today and make sure that they have been fully resolved. And so as you see through the presentation, your requests have been fully resolved. And so I'll take any questions and additional comments, suggestions, and directives at this time.
Thank you, Administrator Donald. I'm going to go to the Commissioner from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Administrator Donald, thank you for the presentation. My first question, and I just want clarity. You said $5.5 million to be used to maintain buildings. Explain that, because it can't be used for maintenance.
Yeah, in SPLOST, you allocated $5.5 million for facility maintenance, building improvements throughout the county. And so those funds are not enough technically. And so the train initiative actually reduces those costs, but you won't have to start eating up those funds because we would be allocating them through the American Rescue Plan through the train initiative. But in SPLOST 8, you've allocated through the public referendum $5.5 million for that purpose.
For infrastructure of new buildings. Okay. You said maintenance, and that just kind of crosses.
No, yes, for maintaining your current building. So if your roof caves in, I think we saw $1.2 million in requests associated with maintaining the sheriff's department's ask this building, ensuring that when we have challenges with, we've had challenges with the elevators, and all of that stuff is included in that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
My next question is, on the slide 2, I guess it's like the ARP allocation. It's kind of just more on a general aspect. Are we gonna like revisit this chart as we go through the next few years? And the reason I say that is because like the first line, we allocated $2 million for COVID-related health insurance claims, and we put $6 million. If we might not need that. In a sense.
Oh, absolutely.
So I guess I'm just trying to understand that, like, though it's there, we'd be able to move it.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, that's a real good question because that's more of a process question too. So we have to report on those things quarterly. And so it's my practice before we actually submit our federal report, we would submit our report to the commission through the Administrative Services Committee. So currently, these are the fees that you are paying, but you're paying them through, or we are paying them through our general fund allocation. This again relieves that pressure on the general fund and uses our federal dollars to do it. But we expect the COVID costs could go down over time. If they do, then you would actually move these funds back into your general ARP pot. So yes, sir, that's exactly what would happen.
Okay. And then my last question is, with the ARP funds, are there positions that will only happen for like, was it 2023, 2024?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and then they'll go away, or we?
Yes, sir.
Is that what?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
that's
what I
the
thought.
plan, is that they go away and they're hired in a fashion that allow you to do that. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you as well, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 8th.
Thank you, Mayor. Got some questions for you, Administrator, which I'm sure you knew were coming. I know there's been a lot of conversations, especially yesterday and last night. You know, in regards to just the engineering aspects of this budget, you know, as I was working my way through the book, looking at the different allocations, you mind if I just go through some questions?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right. All right. We're going to start with tab 2.
Okay.
Right, in the book. In quarter 1, the pay plan supplement, $3.84 million is allocated. Looking at the way that you have that, only selected employees with salaries below $30,000 or around $30,000 are getting the pay adjustments this year. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. So remember, we've made some changes, and I'll go back here because I'm not certain if your books have been updated since you gave me the directive. Remember, that was a week ago. And so the proposal has fully been implemented since that time. So the full 1.542400 has been adjusted now, and the only caveat to that is based on your action for the $15 an hour minimum wage. $199,497 of that, 1.5 million less than 200,000 is there.
I guess we just lost all of our microphones. All right, I'll just talk louder.
I can repeat that. Yeah, I can speak louder. In short, the $1.5 million that is asked for has been fully honored. The only caveat is that prior to that ask, you had already allocated about $200,000 by raising everyone to the $15 minimum wage. Now all 140 have been addressed.
Okay, so in fiscal year 22, the proposed amount's $3.84 million.
They working.
And will all of the employees be getting the 2% increase at that time? Is that how that's going to be distributed?
Test.
So there's no 2% increase. Actually, the increase that is being requested is much larger than 2%. So on average, that request is about 18%. And that's what has been allocated. There's an average of the 1.542. That's an average of about 18%.
Okay. All righty. Well, moving
Remember,
to
my proposal, what is he? Let me make sure. What is it? Oh, okay. So that's different. You're that's not engineering. That's just in general. So you're asking two different questions. So for the pay supplements, first, you've already provided the bonuses and all of that good stuff. The $15 an hour, I think that hits the second pay period in November.
It says quarter one.
Yeah, the second paycheck in November is when the $15 an hour and the compression increases come. Some of that is 2%, but if they were too close at 2%, I think it went up to about 3.5%. But yes, at that second pay period in November, that's when that will be implemented. That's actually in FY21.
Okay.
In FY22, those things simply carry forward all the way through FY24.
Is that what the 3.8 million allocation is for? Is to carry
That's
that
right.
forward? Okay.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, moving on. So there's a transit aspect of the ARP funding as well.
Yes, sir.
It looks like 2.698 is being transferred from the general funds. Where's that being reallocated?
Yeah, that's actually being transferred to transit, correct, based on their deficit. Yeah, so you have a transit deficit. Remember on the 21st I went over, you've got a transit deficit of about 3.2 million. And so you're actually making the transfer to be able to cover that deficit.
How is there a deficit? I thought that they received some funding through the rescue plans and.
No, so remember, I went through that in detail as well. Those CARES Act money that you used last year to be able to cover that, 1-year funds, those actually went away. The additional American Rescue Plan, as well as all of their other federal grants, have been allocated. Remember, it was a $3.2 million deficit, and we utilized those funds to bring that deficit down.
Are we still providing free bus service? Or?
We're not. You actually started back the fees maybe 30 days ago. It might have been about 45 days, yeah.
So not very long.
No, it hadn't been long at all.
Okay.
So we haven't seen what the impact of that is. So again, just to remind everybody, we use some conservative estimates. If we actually blow it out the water and we manage well, then you'll see some increases. But those are kind of conservative estimates on what we expect their revenues to be.
All right. All right. Still got some more questions, Mayor, if that's good.
I can take them. I'm prepared.
All righty. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know the mayor had slipped out.
Are you good?
No, I got some more. All right, moving on to tab 3. So we're going to get into more specific by department. And I guess I failed to talk about. I think I did point out we were on tab 2 when we started that first conversation. But anyway, tab 3, revenue by department. Quarter 4 on page 92 in the transit budget. It says there's $650,000 transfer from TIA funds. Is this from transit TIA project funds of the $7.5 million or TIA discretionary?
Would have been TIA discretionary, but again, since we've had these conversations, those numbers have been reduced to be able to provide the increase to engineering. The bulk of the TIA discretionary actually goes to the engineering department.
What was it reduced to?
I believe about 150,000. It's an approximate number. I don't have it in front of me. Yeah, it'll be updated within your books.
Which, in the big books?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm assuming that so I don't know what your process is, but once you make your final decisions of all of the edits that you want to make, we usually just update those things and
They haven't
get
been
an
updated.
updated book.
This book's only in
No, it wouldn't be updated now because you just asked us to bring this information back. So today you received it in the form of your PowerPoint, and if you say that that's fine and we go, then we would update it. If you don't like the edits that you asked for, then you would give additional directives, and at that time, it would be final.
Just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Oh, absolutely. I'll make sure of that.
I'm just, you said something will be there, and I just want to make sure it will be there.
Well, listen, this is the first time that we've had this conversation and the first time that we've worked on it, but there's not been a time that I've come before the commission and not delivered on what I've said. And so if you can point that out, I'll definitely take it. But in this instance, this is the first time y'all asked us to bring something back. All of the details are included in the PowerPoint first, and if they have to be adjusted, I'll definitely update it. But my word has been my bond.
All right, next question. In Q5, it says indirect cost allocations. This is page 2 and 3. It has some IDC information. what is the IDC amount from engineering SPLOST funding? And how much is from TIA?
I mean, I don't know if we have that prepared today. You're asking for our indirect cost allocation.
Yep.
That's done by Maximus, and he wants a specific line item. So we may have to bring that back to you. If you can give me more context on your question, I can also assist you more.
I guess we can probably do that on offline.
Well, okay, because I think if you're asking specifically, because I've had some conversations offline with the commission and have no issue in being transparent, one of the big concerns related to the indirect cost allocation are the funds that have been allocated to the warden and his delivery of those services. If you go back and look here, and the director can give you some insight on that, we spent quite a bit of time last night addressing that. In the additional $3 million total allocation through the Quick Strike program, because those activities are aligned, he will be able to offset those costs by leveraging $500,000 out of this other category, and he will be able to bill it that way. So that's why it relieves the stress on the stormwater fee.
So there won't be any further, because I know initially there was, it looks like you were taking quite a bit out of stormwater and basically you're going to put it towards the warden's budget.
It was $500,000, and,
yeah.
and the benefit of doing it this way is I think the director believes that he doesn't always use the 8 crews. If he doesn't, he'll be able to bill it as he goes. So if there's good management, he'll actually incur, it's budgeted at $500,000, but he'd actually be able to come in less than that. I think we're projecting around $380,000, and that additional $120 will go to that maintenance. So I'm familiar with that.
And in regards to the warden, I know that he has quite a few open positions when it comes to his crews that are on the ground. You know, and he's expressed that there is some issues with getting new folks in there to handle some of these crews that are out, and it's all based on pay. So is there conversation anywhere happening of maybe getting rid of some of those positions and, you know, adding additional funding to, you know, increase that salary?
We actually talked about that yesterday. I spoke with the warden until about 7:30 last night, and so that's not something that we're going to address through the proposed budget or the final budget. At least we're not proposing to. What we're looking at, and what I don't think he fully understood and grasped, is although he receives state money, it's considered general fund revenue, and so any of those changes have a negative impact on the general fund. But there are other options that we can look at. I think you guys are very well aware that we're going after additional state ARPA funds to be able to offset some of those costs. And then there are other long-term public safety funding that has come down federally, and we're looking at that as well. So the short answer is yes, but how we resolve that, we wouldn't have it resolved at this time.
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
I appreciate all that. And you know, moving forward, you know, it would be really helpful just to maybe as we're updating the pages in our books, if you can give those to us in the work session, so at least we have those in place. That way we're not referring back to old information, you know, because I think that's been part of the trouble here is you have your new numbers compared to what we have.
Well, so those new numbers, though, are included here in the presentation. Again,
I was talking about like a
once
handout.
the commission, I understand what you're saying, but once the commission hasn't approved this yet, so you got the proposed budget, and now I'm receiving directive from the commission. I have brought back what I believe is your directive. If it's incorrect, that's when we would update the documents. Now, if you want some different way, fine with it, but we haven't discussed that at all. So this would be a completely new discussion on process. And for me, I have no problem adjusting to anything the commission wants, but you have to give me clear direction as a full commission, and I'll take it and deliver.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. You good? You good?
Yeah,
Okay.
unless you want to keep going.
No, Mr. Mason?
Very good. Test. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Couple comments, one, and then a question.
Yes, sir.
Just to make sure that we're always clear in terms of the funds that we're using, it's important to note which ones are what single-year monies, what is multi-year monies, because it tends to become confusing for some.
Absolutely.
In terms of what you can do with that money. And so if you would just give us a little background on the usage and how that works, so that everybody's on the same sheet of music with these funds and how they can be utilized.
Yeah, no problem at all. So for the American Rescue Plan funds, now there are restrictions on how you utilize them. So, and I know we've gone over some of that a little bit before you actually joined us, but they are focused mainly, and I'm just high level, public safety, public spaces, water quality, and revenue recovery, meaning if you lose funds and you place them back in the general fund. In this proposal, specifically for the areas that the commission may have given some additional directives on, the engineering retention initiative has been funded, of course, through the tier discretionary, while those are temporary funds, got them up to 10 years, and so that helps to offset some of those costs, and that's the request of our engineering director, that the funds that he identified are the ones that we're utilizing. And so
now, Mr. Administrator, while you're right there, this is a good point here. You say you've got up to 10 years. That's not meaning that money's coming in every year for 10 years. You've got an X, or what does it mean?
That's right. Yeah, so you collect those in the same way that you do your SPLOS. So in non-consolidated governments, they're referring to TIA as T-SPLOS. And so it would operate along those same lines. The only difference is that in our consolidated government, which blew me away when I first got here, is that you fully collect. It's not based on projections. You fully collect what you place in your referendums, and so that also helps us deliver quality products better. So those funds do have an expiration date, but it's a longer period of time.
That's right.
Your American Rescue Plan is probably your shortest amount of funding. It's longer than CARES Act. I think CARES Act was like a year and a half. These run through the end of 2024, but you have until 2026 to be able to complete your encumbrances and obligations. But your programs, the funds have to be obligated by 24. So you can still pay those out through 26. This train initiative, the reason we want to leverage it that way, this is another longer term project for the government, has about $25 million in value, and the percentage for which you provide, or the allocation for which you provide, is right around $5 million for that $25 million in maintenance enhancements, as well as the level of energy efficiency that you're going to receive. And so, but those costs that you provide, meaning us, are up front. And so utilizing that one-time fee from the American Rescue Plan aligns. While it's not on here, because we did go over that in pretty great detail, the Streetlight Fund, that's another piece that you would be using your temporary source, meaning the American Rescue Plan, to be able to deliver that, we'll call it infrastructure, on behalf of your citizens prior to enacting the required fees. The reason that I am proposing that is because if you light up Augusta, people feel like now if I have to pay a fee, at least I can see the growth in the infrastructure and the quality of service that I'm receiving versus paying for it now and receiving it later. We've got a one-time opportunity to do that, and that's my proposal, but it does not mean that that is something that the commission has to take. But those, again, are one-time funds, and I'm not certain how we pay for it otherwise. In addition to that, what it also does is it removes the debt or the deficit for both the current year and the next year. So it gives the commission time to vet those proposals, and if you don't like it, you just reallocate the funds.
So there's a lot that's been said there, and
sorry about that. I mean,
no, and that's good. I did that for a purpose, because it's a monumental task. You're doing a lot of bouncing around, and you've got to figure out, okay, this single-use money or single-year money, we've got multi-year money over here, we got this going on over there, between yourself and finance and those sort of things. Those are those type of things that basically we pay you all for to do, because you have those experiences there. But as we go through our meetings and things like that, sometimes it's good to note, okay, this is coming out of this fund, which is a single year fund, just to kind of remind us of what some of us may not know, because we don't know it to that depth and that level, and that could clear up some of the questions that will come from it, or we could hear from finance or whatever the case may be, those that are in that position to speak to that. So that's the only reason why I asked about that. So I thank you for clearing that up. Also, as a question or as a statement, or maybe it's more of a question, then I got a final question. These program operational funds, so let's say, for instance, when we're designating funds for people like the DDA and that sort of thing, one of the things that I guess bothers me somewhat, and I want to know if there's anything that we can do to help clear this up.
Okay.
And it's not just the DDA, so I don't want to just point them out, but a lot of times when we put these funds out there, more goes for program management than to do for the work that needs to be done. And if we're giving $250,000 and $200,000 going to go for program costs and only $50,000 for the job that we need done, to me that's not good business sense.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, that's an excellent point. And so not only Director Malik's credit, but also our new capital projects manager, Mr. Lampkin, and even the commission. I'll start off with the commission. This year in SPLOST, the commission actually allocated program fees kind of separately than the actual programs themselves. And so it makes it a lot easier to deliver our projects. So definitely want to give kudos to the commission. But even on the piece for allocating to the DDA, I had a conversation with Director Malik last night about this. We would allocate it in a way where he would write that MOU and ensure that the thresholds of project delivery meet what we are asking for. And so they have programs that are already existing downtown, which of course we can't tell them what to do, but also others who are interested in delivering who can actually easily ramp up and keep those costs low. So that's one, just highlighting, because I know we don't want to call them out,
right.
But if we do mention them, we want to highlight the good opportunities that they have. But with the others, I think you're 100% right. That's why with our capital projects now, when we post our existing capital projects, the next iteration of that will highlight how much of that goes to the actual program itself. So we're fully online with that and agree with you. I also can't talk about what folks did before I got here,
right.
But here we want to make sure that we continue to be transparent in that and keep our administrative costs down.
Well, I think that's important to me, and I'm sure it's important to my colleagues as well. I don't mind calling them out. I really don't, because the fact of the matter is we're talking about taxpayers' dollars. And at the end of the day, I think what we're all getting tired of is the amounts of monies that are designated to entities and then the least amount of service that we receive for the money that they're given. And what we see is more is going into people's pockets than it is the service that we're requiring them to do. So some kind of way, now that you are here,
that's right,
and moving forward, that's something I think that would be pretty important for us to make sure that we see moving forward. And now's a good time to start.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So
agree.
now moving on. I got one final question. Oh, Mr. Mayor is back. Continue on, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please do.
Thank you. Tab 6 under program enhancement, human resource role. If our colleagues go to tab 6, it's page 1 on the human resource. There's $250,000 from the general fund, which is allocated to the new compensation study. Augusta completed compensation study as recently as 2018. And I know we also did one when I was on the commission under Fred Russell. So now there's one under Janet Jackson, or Janice, not Janet. Janice should be still alive. Janice Jackson. We've done one under Fred Russell during my term. So my question to you is, why not use, why not use that study in 2018 and reallocate that $250,000 that we're talking about to the general fund for other needs, such as my colleague mentioned, funding the wardens for inmates and the services and things like that. I mean, 2018 wasn't that long ago. I don't know how much has changed in between time, and I know things do change over time. But see, we did this 2015, we did this 2012, we did this 2018. I mean, do we really, and this is on you, but do we really need to do this every 3 years?
So I don't think every 3 years, and I think the proposal since that time, I actually had a robust conversation with both Commissioner Hassan and Commissioner Garrett, who had similar thoughts related to specifically when we talk about the biggest challenges in implementing that last pay in class plan are around utilities and engineering. And so in lieu of that, while that $250,000 is allocated, I do think that it can be brought down. But the challenge is it was only 75% implemented, that whole pay in class plan. And so they were kind of left out. What I would propose to do, and definitely have kind of figured out from the commission, that there's consensus to reduce that number and add those funds back to the general fund. I think all of you are right on target with that, but I do believe you want to look closely at your engineering and utilities department and engineering environmental services, because those three, especially with their categories, they're so different than the others. Even in admin, in one of those three does something very different, let's say, than in my office, and requires a different skill set and things of that nature. So I would recommend leaving some funding there, but reducing it to focus on those three. And so I wouldn't, I mean, you would get no pushback from me anyway, it's y'all's budget, but I do believe, especially after the conversation that I had with those two gentlemen and their knowledge on the Engineering
Right.
Services Committee, I think that's the right way to go.
Yeah, I think we need to look at a major reduction there.
Is there
So-
a suggestion from the committee? I believe we could likely get a study like that done for about $75,000. I don't know if that's too much or if the commission
Sounds
would like
good.
to.
$75,000 it is. The other $175,000 goes back to the general fund for other services and uses. My final question is there someone doing and looking at fund retrievals from other governmental projects and entities so that we can continue to have funds available to do the people's work?
Man, I'm starting to think y'all are bugging my telephone. I actually, when I
We
first
wouldn't-
got here,
watch out now.
spoke with the mayor about some of those opportunities. We, in the past, and other governments have utilized the Peachtree Recovery Services Group that comes through GMA. I know the mayor's been an advocate of that, and some of the commissioners who sit on these GMA committees. We're looking at that, and we plan to bring it back to the commission through committee. Remember, you tasked us with finding new revenue sources. We're looking at that as well as legislation that's actually in the pipeline for this upcoming January that would do that. But listen, in the midst of the budget, we haven't figured it out, but it will come back to the commission during not this committee cycle, but the following one. But the short answer is yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I yield my time back to the chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner from the 4th. Along those lines, I want to, this has been robust conversation. I want to remind everyone that all too often how we view government and the role of government, it often gets lost on those who do the work, and we don't competitively compensate individuals. And while I agree 100% with the reduction in the amount for the compensation study, I want to challenge this body that we do more than, quote, provide folks with a job, but we provide them with competitive wages. Right. This is a competitive market that people working in. We have very talented and skilled individuals. And one of the best ways and gauges to know that is by having appropriate comp studies being done. And that gives us the tools necessary to, across this entire organization, make sound decisions as it relates to all employees and making sure that they've got a competitive wage. Chair recognizes the commissioner from the 5th, the Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm good.
All right, he waves. Chair recognizes the commissioner from the 6th.
No, it should be Johnson.
Should be Johnson. Okay. All right. Chair recognizes commissioner from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take the commissioner from the 5th time too, so just add that to my docket. I think he'll appreciate what I'm about to say. First of all, thank you for the presentation. I think this is getting us in a really good position to start getting some things done. But I do have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
The first question is about the strike, the quick strike.
Yes, sir.
What role would the DDA play in that quick strike?
So they would be the facilitator to actually carry those services out in the downtown corridor, as defined by our director. It would likely extend past some of the things that they're doing now. But let's say there is a need to eliminate graffiti, maintain those sidewalks and things of that nature. Not taking on any of the services that we currently provide, but an augmentation, very similar to what we're seeing the ACE group do currently. They would be the facilitator of that, and they might even decide to partner with one of those.
See, that was going to be my
groups.
next point.
They could do that, or they could go in another direction, but they would basically be our facilitator to bring those type of partnerships together.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because ACES is where I was going next. I mean, they're walking Broad Street every day doing just that, cleaning up trash, cutting weeds. You know, they are getting rid of the graffiti. So I think that instead of leaving the opportunity, instead of leaving it up to them, I think that we ought to have some type of clear. I know we may not be able to do that, but we need to keep into consideration that there's an organization doing that work now that had to raise those private funds to keep going forward. I'll just submit that. And again, I asked that, and I don't want to even see you down that road right now.
I would just say that I think that once they receive the funds, they can move however they like. I think we're all big fans of the new work that is taking place, and I think it would be a clear opportunity that they would explore. But I would stop short of giving direction on how they would move forward.
And the biggest thing there, in my mind, is just the accountability piece.
Understood.
We get the money. We want to see results. And I'm seeing results with one group. I just want to continue seeing results downtown.
Yes, sir.
Because it's a long time coming. The second question is more so along the American Rescue Plan dollars. I love the idea of taking care of our house first, which is really good. But there are some proposed allocations on here that I think that we can do a little bit more with.
Okay.
Out of the $82 million, it looks like we have committed and proposed a little over $71 million. Is that what this is showing me? Am I reading this correctly?
Probably be close to that, I would say, over that time period. Yeah.
So we mentioned about $1 million per district. Is that in that committed portion?
Yeah, if you look, it would be uncommitted, but it's exactly $11 million. If you go right down to the bottom, it's right there in unassigned balance.
Okay, unassigned balance. Perfect.
Yeah, and it'll probably increase because, remember, some of these things are so the COVID piece, I think Commissioner Garrett did a really good job. It was either him or Commissioner Fransom highlighting, while we've allocated $6 million, as COVID numbers go down, that number's definitely going to go down. But since you spent it in the past, you want to make sure to allocate those funds to be able to carry it out. So that number would definitely go up. But yeah, those funds are there.
I got you. And just the last comment here is that, the American Rescue Plan is our once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do some really big things for the community. And I'm looking at, and I know when I say this, I'm probably going to get, folks might not like it, but $6 million for streetlights. I know we want to get the streetlight program going, but we only have $1 million in allocated here proposed for blight and affordable housing. Folks are getting evicted and turned around every day with less and less options for affordable housing. Can we not do more with that?
Well, but remember, you've also received
Administrator
13
Donald, before you go, Commissioner, what page are you on?
I am on the ARP allocation.
Yeah, he's just
Okay,
looking
you're
at the
back on that
slide.
again.
Yeah.
On the slide.
Yeah.
On
I
the
just want to
slide.
draw everybody's attention there.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
thank
on
you.
the screens too.
And I'm only asking because, again, there are some big ticket items that we've been discussing over the past few months, especially around affordable housing, food deserts, all these types of things. I think that some of this money, if I'm not mistaken, can be used for some of those items to where, in that executive order the president wrote that talks about the underserved. I think that we can do a little bit better of a job, addressing some of those issues. And again, like I said, if I'm missing something, please help me understand.
Yeah, I
want
want to point you to a couple of things. When you talk about blight and affordable housing, don't forget that you also put $4 million in SPLOST to be able to resolve some of those things. So that number actually grows. When you talk about emergency rental assistance and eviction moratoriums, with the new adjustments that they made to make those funds more flexible, we've received a total of $13 million there, in addition to the $2.2 million that we've been talking about, a non-congregate shelter, that you will actually have the ability to use that money a little bit differently if you want to. So the proposals for the American Rescue Plan is just an add-on. you've received additional CDBG funds. You've received additional. I'm trying to. You know what CDBG is, but ERA, emergency rental assistance, the homeless additional funds. So those would be able to be blended with this. So it's not a either or, it's an and. So when you look at blight, the reason why the number is so low is because you can actually correct and build whatever structure you want using your SPLOST funds. But what you cannot do is actually tear them down and maintain.
Right.
And so the only way to truly fully implement that, the new ordinance that you have, is to ensure that you're not only in position to build something, but that you can maintain it and knock it down or acquire when necessary. So I would temper that by saying I fully agree with you. It's not enough, but with the commitment that our public and our commission has made with SPLOST, it ties them together and makes those numbers greater.
Understood. I understood. And I appreciate it. Again, I just want to submit to not only just the record, but just for this body that, you know, I don't want us to miss out on this opportunity.
Yes, sir.
To really do some big things for this community, especially around the issues of food deserts.
Yeah.
All of our districts touch a food desert at some point. These dollars can be leveraged to get on the move for that.
That's
So,
right. You know, Commissioner, that's a great point, and I included it in the transmittal letter, but I probably need to include it in some of these presentations too. As a reminder, you also put some money in for retail recruitment, and so that's, I know you and I have had the pleasure of talking offline about leveraging some of those funds to get grocery stores in food deserts and things of that nature, and so that aligns. I would say that the incentivizing cannot be done with the ARP, which is why, in my perspective, which is not have to be right, but if you cannot use those funds to incentivize, but you have put retail recruitment that can allow you to incentivize, now when you start doing structures and things of that nature, you can combine the two sets of funding. So it requires that coordination that you want through the economic development officer. So we have to do that, but the funding at least is there to connect the dots.
Okay, and final question.
Yes,
final
sir.
question. The community allocations, the request for funding, at what point will that information go out to the community for them to request funding through the American Rescue Plan?
So if the commission, I think it's the 16th, is you pass the budget and do all of that good stuff, we would then come back with that plan and say, hey, commission, here's how we've got the funds allocated. I think I've included in the presentations the criteria, the basic criteria. You would vet that, and then we would create that process. Once it's done, we could release a NOFA, a notice of funding availability, and then people would be able to apply and all of that good stuff. That's the plan now.
Would that be part of the committed
does that
funds,
work?
or is that
You said what now?
would that be part of the committed and unproposed, or is that in the unassigned? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yep,
Okay.
yep,
All right.
yep.
No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the commissioner from the 6th, and then I'll come back to the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate all of my colleagues' comments. I think it's been a very eye-opening session, and I appreciate the administrator being able to respond in a timely manner and make the adjustments for some of the things that he heard. But I want to make a couple of comments here. One is about, like my commission, one of my colleagues said about the DDA in terms of that. I think also one of the things that when the DDA, I think the last time Commissioner Mason was here in particular, one of the things that was going on downtown is the business owners down there made a conscious decision to increase their taxes and create a business improvement district. That can go along with enhancing that. Now, there may be some problems now about who they want to manage that, but that done very well, and that was up to the commission to approve that once they got the appropriate 51% of the property owner's signature on that. That'll be something we try to get them to bring some skin in the game. We not taking on all by ourselves, even though ultimately we're responsible for the cleanup of the city, but they wanted special and significant care, and I agree to that, but they also want to have some skin in the game, so I'll revisit that as well, so I agree with that. Also, when you talk about the $4 million that we got in SPLOST, I think in those $4 million for demolishing of homes in particular, you know, I don't know how many homes in here, but I know from some of the numbers I've seen previously, at an average of $7,000 per home, we can tear down 550 homes with that money.
can't use it for that.
Yeah, I'm talking about the SPLOST.
You can't.
Well, whatever we got it for, whatever we're gonna do, because you can't manage, you can't maintain it. Whatever you got to do, find some kind of way to do something with it. The other thing is I wanted to say is I want to understand about this train thing. Is this a long-term relationship that we're already in?
Yes, and I just wanted to highlight something because I think you're dead on, Commissioner, with SPLOST, but I think it's in reverse. Remember, for SPLOST, you can build it, but you can't take it down.
Right.
That's why. So, yep.
I mean,
And
but you can find a way to leverage it.
that's right. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And so for the train performance contract, this agreement, it does kind of predate me, but it is a long-term commitment that you've made. I think you have obligated about $700,000 towards the initiative, but it should pay those dividends after about 3 or 4 years. You should start seeing humongous dividends. But the projects have already been identified. The assessment has already been done. And I think that's why we know, that's why we know we can leverage the American Rescue Plan, because air quality, water quality, energy efficiency, et cetera, align with those requirements. But yes, that commitment, I believe, was made in 2019, if not early 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
So that's about a $1.2 million a year or something on that or something?
Yeah, the way it's allocated, it would equate to about that, but you would actually take on the bulk of your cost in the first 2 years.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Well,
one more question.
and
That's
I really probably should say the first 3 years, because you're already kind of a year without allocating any funding towards it, solely obligating cost.
So let me, and I know this is no reflection, this is just a question and probably what you have gotten from Central Services or either just trained themselves. All of these things that we're talking about, obviously now solar power installations in terms of this building and stuff, but the upgrades to this building, none of those update quality standards seem to have been in place, and we spent right at about $30 million in this building alone?
Well, some of them for this building for sure, but not throughout the county. And so this is, I want to say it's 86 total facilities across Augusta. And you could imagine some of them are in dire need for some of these changes. Because we're in a public forum, I won't call out, all
right.
of them. But, I mean, there are some facilities when we start talking about HVAC replacements and how to make sure we're purchasing the appropriate new HVAC system that would last 12 years versus 7, and our maintenance costs be reduced based on that purchase. I think that's important. When you look at chillers, that's another large one. I think even when we look at the great enhancements that were made over at the Aquatic Center, all of that type of stuff would line up under here.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes,
thank
sir.
you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Minister, I have a
Yes,
few
sir.
questions here.
All right.
Tab 4, starting on page 1. There's a lot of increases within departments. And I guess my question is, are the justifications for that in the back, like in 5 or 6, or are they just, the mayor's office going up 68,000?
That's
Your
one.
office-
Yeah, that's one that I definitely want to highlight because I saw that one written on. So with the mayor's office,
4,
because I talked about it, but I saw on one of our local blogs this Sunday, they highlighted the mayor's office going up by 68,000. What you had in the mayor's office and that justification, I don't think there was a justification specific for that because the ask was higher than that. What we end up making the adjustment was there is no more of an MBK specific carve out. You had that outside of the operating budget. You had a special program for MBK. That special program was eliminated and those funds were put into the operating budget. So that remains the same. If that was 38,000, it was taken out of that special line item and it was put into the operating budget.
Yeah, but
Then-
his budget for last year was 485,000, and now you're recommending 554. So that's an increase. That's the.
What's that increase based on?
And I'm not trying to just talk about. I want the justification because when we talk about, there's a lot of departments. I mean, if you go through here, there's like 6 departments on this one page where there's increases. Your office 100. $36,000.
Yeah,
The
I know
administrator's
those.
office. And then the finance department goes up $227,410. The human resources goes up significantly. And I guess, like, I think that it's important that as commissioners we hear the justification of why they're going up and, like, what does that mean, the why behind it. And that was the
Yeah.
reason I'm bringing it to the attention.
Yep, and so we can make sure to get you those, but let me just look at that real quick. Yeah, it was, but yeah, it was on. I know you weren't here for the last presentation, but it was on there. But if you look at the mayor's, because I actually don't think if you look at tab 4 and you look at the mayor's budget, you look at the 2021 is at 485. What you will see is that there was the increase is 68, but you actually see the mayor's keepers program office go down by the 36, and you see the increase related to the full-time to part-time. So it's the increase in salary as well as the benefits. And so that net is 68,000. The 36 is removed from one line item, simply the line item, and added to another. For the administrator's office, that is the movement of 311. I mean, I can resend you.
I just think that's important that as commissioners.
But
Yeah.
it was in there in the last presentation that we did. You just were not here, so I will forward that to you because it was received. I sent that out. I sent out the full presentation with those increases and decreases.
Okay. Well, I think it'd be important that if it's not, I thought it was in the table. I thought that typically it's in the back of the book, like any like changes of like, and I didn't see a couple of them. That's why I'm just asking the question.
If you tell me what they are, we'll just get them. So,
But there's a few that like we can go through. Like I can send them because I mean there's a bunch in here. I just want to understand. Like I looked at any that was like over $50,000 and understanding why the increase was what it was. Like you see what I'm saying? Like in each department. Like again, there's 6 departments here that I've mentioned significant amount of increases in. Just trying to understand the why.
And so I do know that it was on, and because I saw some people saying, I don't remember that. It's actually on the slide that I highlighted that showed the overall increases, and I'm sure we all occasionally read the Augusta Presser or whatever it is on Sundays. They actually detailed some of that. I mean, I normally don't. Folks forward it to me and I laugh at it. But in that one, they highlighted the piece there where they asked about those specific increases, so they were looking at that slide. What it shows is that there were increases in medical, ADP, and some of the others. So the ADP contract, I think it has a 4% increase annually that's built in. So we simply detailed those, but we'll just add it into the books. I'm not sure about how you did it last year, but we're preparing all of the ask of the various departments, and so we can just make sure to include that as well if you think it's helpful.
Again, just trying to understand it, sir. That's
Understood.
all. If you look
would
at
that be helpful?
Yeah,
if
it
we
would.
just added that? Okay.
I think so.
We'll
If
get
you look
that to everybody.
if you look at page 25 under tab 4. What was 136 for in your office? Did you know that one? They asked. The 130. Oh.
So let's do this. I know there's a lot of questions. We want to make sure we get all the answers and a lot of chatter. All right, the commissioner from the 7th still has the floor. Let's just take a pause, and we're going to give him an opportunity to get an answer for that question. I believe what the administrator indicated is that he'll provide to this body. There's another meeting that's scheduled for the 4th, and that meeting that'll take place on the 4th. We'll have that information readily available. I'm going to give you a chance to answer it, but I want to remind everyone there's another meeting that'll take place on the 4th. So any additional questions beyond our time until 1:30, let's just submit them, and then you'll get them. All right, Commissioner from the 7th, back to you.
Okay. Do you want to finish that question,
Yep.
sir?
The 311 Open Records Officer and Economic Development Officer.
Okay.
All of which the commission approved.
Yep. And I guess
And this year, yeah.
Okay. A couple more, I promise. The page 25, all the administration costs on the CDBG, the home, Hopwa, like it's about $1 million in increase, and I'm just again like, what is it? Because we're asking for bigger things and there's more minutes. Like, what is the reason that the
Well,
cost?
we've increased additional.
total, and you've got all of the ARP money and another grant.
Yeah, it's just a new grant.
It's a combination.
Yeah, so those are all of the grants that you've received. So all of those have administrative costs. And so they're carved out from the ERA 1, 2, and 3, from the ARP funds, any administrative costs associated with that. Because remember, they get American Rescue Plan cost as well.
Right. So I guess my thing is like, if those increase, I mean, the significant increases, if you look at page 25, my question is, if we were asking for this amount and the money we were administrative costs are this, are you saying now we're asking for this amount and that's the reason the administrative cost out? Because it doesn't make sense that, why would the cost go up so much if we're asking for the same things that we typically ask for, I guess is my question.
Well, I believe the numbers that you are receiving are higher. So one example, I'll just use one that's off the top of my head because you just approved this. Remember when you received the second batch of, what are we calling it, CARES Act 2, from there, the staff asked for 2 additional positions because they couldn't offset those costs. So those 2 additional positions increased your cost there. And so across those grants, that's what you have happening.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah.
And then I noticed there's, and I'm gonna just kind of name a few.
Okay.
H&D, CVB, TIA, Public Works. There's a lot of contingency dollars. Mm-hmm. Like, what was the thought? Because we haven't done that the last few years. Like, what's the thought behind why we're doing it that way? Parks and Rec had one, a significant amount of dollars.
I'm sorry, you have to repeat that and frame it for me.
There's new contingency line items where the last few years we haven't put it in contingency, and I guess I'm trying to understand, like, why are we putting large sums under contingency as opposed to doing it the way we have in the past?
Some of what he may be seeing under contingency is the reimbursement from the ARP for the health insurance costs.
Oh, that's right. That's
What
right.
we have to track.
Your cost allocation, that's what you're looking at. So I'm sorry, I didn't bring my book for this one.
Splat
So,
State?
No. Your cost allocation across the for the cost of health care that we're actually trying to adjust. So for your I forgot what this is called, but your health care, increased health care cost, you're paying that across the fund, so you're budgeting for it. Everybody actually pays a percentage of that cost. So you'll see that across the government.
Okay, so I'm just going to pick one here. Page 51, cultural recreation, contingency program funds, $5.5 million. The last 2 years it's been zero.
What page is that?
Page 51 under tab 4. If Donna's going to speak, can she come forward?
Administrator, can we have Ms. Williams to come to the mic, please?
So that one is specifically related to Splat State, correct? The one you're asking about. If you're on tab 4. You don't know.
Shouldn't be under Splosh State because it's not.
No, that's not 8.
That's Splosh 5. But I'm just.
Where is it? Wait a minute. I'm looking for the detail.
Can I ask this question while you're doing that? While she's looking, this is for you. My question is, what is the accounting process or time frame for things to be paid in this government? And the reason I say that is because every year we have this budget, and every year you look at it right now. If you look at tab 4, page 97, 41.5% of the money's been spent, and we're in October. 41.5, which is only $3.382 million of the 920. My question is, why is it that like we do this budget and every year, so are we 60 days behind, 90 days behind? Like, what is the
No,
typical time behind?
I don't
Because
think it's just about paying. So remember, the bulk of your budget is actually in capital projects. And so what that says is that you're pushing capital projects from year to year. And so that is where the growth in your budget is. The growth in your budget, if you look at just the general fund, you're talking about on average $170 million every year, give or take some growth. But the bulk of that is within your various SPLOST allocations, and it's in the project delivery of those. It's not in your actual general fund budget. That growth or that rollover is your capital projects.
okay, it just seems like there's a lot of things in here that like expenses hadn't been allocated, and yet we're increasing the expenditures, and they're not even close to expenditures for this year. I guess is
but
my thing.
there's a difference between your general fund expenditures and revenues and your capital one. So if you pulled out your capital projects, which we can do that, you would see that those numbers are quite a bit different. Those are your regular bills. I mean, I think 55% of that is your payroll. The balance of that is your other general fund activities, whether it be rent, mortgage, service delivery, materials, etc. But when you look at your capital funds, what it would say is that you're still carrying capital projects from as far back as SPLOST 5 all the way through now, you're in SPLOST 8.
Okay. And did we get an answer? And then I have
Page
my last
51,
question.
He's asking about 51, tab 4.
Yes, sir. I'm going to ask if we can get you some detailed information on that. That is from SPLOST 5. It is quite possibly funds that have been closed out, that need projects that have been closed that need to be reallocated, that have not yet gone before the commission to be for
Okay.
that process.
All right.
It's a part of an ongoing deal as you go through the SPLOST phases.
Okay, let me jump in. It's 1:29, so we need to get ready for the
I have
next
one-
session.
Yes, sir. We do have the public hearing scheduled at 1:30, and we would
Can I
have a
ask-
sign-up sheet for
Take me
individuals
20.
in
It's
the
an
back.
easy question.
Okay.
Easy question.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
My
yeah,
last
let's see.
question.
Yeah,
My last
15
question is
seconds.
15 seconds. Is there any money left for this commission to allocate towards things like the canal, like the library, or do we have to take from other budgets to get that money?
I mean, you would technically take from other budgets in any adjustment that you make, but if you give direction and there's consensus among the commission, we make the adjustment. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so changing gears,
Well,
Mr. Mayor.
Not just yet. Yeah, we
I
still
gotta
got a
make
couple
sure
of things.
we calibrate.
We'll convene the public hearing in just a moment, but let's make sure we close this out the right way. I want to take a public service announcement opportunity. If you are on the city's text messaging service, you should have received the Homeless Task Force Action Committee survey. I would ask everyone to complete that. Vital information that will help us as we're making decisions about how we address the homeless challenge in our community. Again, that's the Homeless Task Force Action Committee survey. It was sent out on yesterday around 10:29 a.m. And if necessary, we'll have it forwarded by way of email so you can click on the link and complete the survey. That is our public services announcement for today. Kicking it back to the administrator.
Yes, sir. So I think what we heard from today, and we can make sure to add those ask and adjustments that Commissioner Frantum asked for. We'll basically just add those as an add-on to the books. They probably won't fit in your binder, so we'll just do a separate binder with that information. The second piece is to reduce the 250 down to 75. And then while it was ancillary, I think it was pretty clear in the MOU, especially related to the DDA allocation, to make sure that administrative costs are as low as possible and that the deliverables are fully included in there. I think that's what that's the feedback that I've gotten so far to be prepared for the 4th. And then it appears that these other adjustments can be added as updates to the book, including the 250 down to 75.
Yes. In similar fashion as you've done in previous presentations, Administrator Donald.
Yeah.
If you
But we'll
communicate
include it in the
that
book as
manner,
well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll do the book
do it
as
in the
well.
book
But
as well.
if you'll
So
just
it'll be
communicate it in
supplement.
this fashion, it'll
Yeah.
be a supplement to the existing notebooks that we have.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. Fantastic. And it's now 1:32, and the public hearing has now been called into session.
Got it.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Thank you. All interested persons are invited to attend and participate in today's budget work session forum. All verbal comments are limited to 3 minutes, and written comments will be accepted. All persons wishing to speak may approach the podiums and sign in. Are you wishing to speak, sir?
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Yeah, over here. Okay. Go ahead and sign in.
We are in session for the public hearing for the FY 2022 budget. This is the public hearing session for the FY 2022 proposed budget. If you'd like to speak on this matter, then there's a sign-up sheet in the rear next to the marshal.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, how are you planning to take those that have signed up? Are you going to do it collectively or as they come in?
Well, as they sign up, we'll take them right out of the gate.
Okay. All right. We have Mr. Lenny Pokey. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. If you would please. Are you wishing to?
You're here to speak on the budget, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
My name's Lenny Pulley. I'm with the Augusta Boxing Club. I'm going to take this off so you guys can hear me if that's okay.
Yes, that's fine.
With the Augusta Boxing Club, I'm a board member. With me today is Ray Whitfield. He's the director of the Augusta Boxing Club. And I'm going to start off by appreciating you guys letting us speak today and the financial support you've provided to us. Obviously, I don't have a lot of time, but I want to go into what the boxing club is. I know everybody's familiar with the boxing club, but does not realize exactly what the boxing club does. And we're a community organization. We've been around 45 years. It practically should be a historical site. We're known around the country, and we work with high-risk kids you see on the streets, street toughs. We work with kids that many organizations don't want anything to do with. They're scared of them. Or like in military triage, you get groups of wounded and you save the ones you can, and the high-risk ones, you hope that they'll make it. They're the ones that we go after. And so I know I don't have a lot of time here, but what we do with these kids, people ask and I'll get into why we're asking for more money, but people ask, why do we use boxing as a median to get these kids off the street? And we work closely with the police department. I have a letter from the police department I'll provide to you after this. We use boxing as a median because these kids on the street that we're trying to save, these high-risk kids, they have this mentality of the street toughness, this manly, this manly image. It's an affront to their manhood if it's challenged. So if you say, well, these kids go on the street corner, say, I'm going to the library, I'm going to the community center, which are great places to go. As we know, that's where they should be. That's not manly enough for them. So these kids, when they have the boxing club, they can say, I'm going to the boxing club, and these guys back off. It gives them an out to say that they're going to the boxing club. And I would like to have had more time to get into how we lure them in. There's a story of a kid came from a broken family, poor, same old story, juvenile delinquent, fighting all the time, getting in trouble with the law. And he gets in a fight one night, and a guy from the boxing club says, hey, you're a great fighter, you need to come down to the boxing club, show these guys how to fight. Well, he goes down to the boxing club and he gets his butt whipped because then he says, well, I want to learn this. This is a skill. We realize it's a skill. And he wants to learn it so he can take it back to the street. But that guy who got him down there lured him in there because he knew this guy couldn't beat any of these guys at the boxing club. And it's how we lure them in there. And then we start developing their self-control, self-discipline, self-confidence, which they're hugely lacking, self-esteem, a hard work ethic, team cohesion, obeying authority. And it's hard training. So once they start training, this kid doesn't want to take it back to the street. He wants to go and he wants to compete against kids that are who have trained like him and at a level that he's at. And so these kids end up in less fight. They have to pass school. We have a great record at the boxing club of graduation rates. Crime in our area has gone down because of the number of kids. We have an enormous amount of kids at the boxing club right now, but we don't turn anybody down. This kid I'm talking about ended up, who had zero prospects, ended up graduating high school, eventually went to college, got an engineering degree, then he went in the military as enlisted, became an officer, and then became an executive with an energy company. And you wonder why I know so much about this kid or what he was thinking is because that kid was me. That kid was Pat Clayton. I don't know if Pat Clayton's here. He was a former boxer. He has a similar story. Ray Whitfield, as everybody is familiar with, has a similar story, and many other kids. And this is what the boxing club can do for these kids. It's a year-round sport, and I hate to even mention the word sport because we're a community organization. And right now, we're in need of help. The building we were in for 26 years, doctor donated it to us. I mean, great man. We really appreciate the fact that he donated this building to us. But he's elderly, he's retired, and had to sell the building. So we had no choice to be on the street, and we weren't going to put these kids on the street. That's a refuge for them there. And so we had to buy the building, and they gave us a good deal. And the building's in need of enormous repairs. But we were able to get the bank to give us a loan. It had to be secured by another donor. We got an SBA loan, and now the boxing club's in debt. And, we need help in at least paying off the building. If we get the building paid off, we could be in much better shape.
Louis, your time has expired. But if you have a request that's in writing, you can place that in the hands of our finance director, who's right behind you, and we'll review that and give consideration to that as we continue our budget hearings.
Yeah, we've submitted the request.
Okay.
You guys do give us $50,000 a year, so we've submitted the request and we're asking for more.
Okay, and how much more?
100,000 more.
Okay.
And if it could be, even if it could be just for a short period of time to help us pay off the building for the boxing club, it'd be great. This boxing club's famous around the country. Everybody knows the Augusta Boxing Club. And, it's been longest running in the country except for one in New York City. This is a community organization that we don't want to fade into history.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know who else we have signed up to speak or want requesting to speak at this time.
Mr. Mayor.
Chair recognizes Commissioner from the first.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have a question for the administrator.
Yes, please.
Do we have a mechanism in place to entertain requests from nonprofits like this? Like, is there a program in place that we have, kind of like what we with our small business assistance program? Do we have anything in place like that?
So you definitely have a small business assistance program, but I think this request is coming through the normal budget process. Now, our allocations don't add up to $100,000 for those outside support services that we do, and for the SBA loans or any forgivable or non-forgivable loans, we actually don't play a role in that. But we can likely make referrals as well, because I think, we've done that here recently, so we can make sure to do that after this meeting.
But as far as to like being a clear criteria as to who gets what through the budget process, just submit a request and keep going. We don't have anything
that's
really
pretty
in place
much,
right now.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think the process so far has been to remain flat, except for those costs like healthcare and others that you have to incur. Everything else has been flat.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there anyone else?
I don't
Okay.
have anyone who has signed up here. Ms. Williams indicated she had a roster in the back of the room. I'm not sure. Are there anyone in the chamber who would like to address the public hearing? Apparently not, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Administrator, based on what the gentleman just said to Mike, do you know whether you received from them the amount to pay off the building, or just additional $100,000? $100,000. I'm sorry.
I believe it was an additional request for the $100,000, and they may have submitted the purpose. I don't know if that made it to me. I don't think so, but I do know that we kept keeping everything flat, so it was not considered in that manner.
Mr. Mayor, do you mind me asking the gentleman? Sir, what was the amount to pay off the building?
Lewis, if you'll come back to the microphone, please.
It was $120,000. The loan was $120,000. We had the SBA loan of $80,000. We used $30,000. The building was $150,000 to the doctor. We paid $30,000 down from the SBA loan, and we borrowed $120,000. And the other $50,000 we had has to be used for resources. I mean, we got tape on bags. We have. It's bad, and we got 110 kids. It keeps increasing.
Okay.
That's just not going to,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's a
Thank you, sir.
burden on us. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Commissioner from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is why I asked the last question that I did on the budget time, that I think that as the commission, we really need to come up with a system of finding resources for special projects or special needs where it's definitely community and kids focused, in this community. And I'm hoping over the next few budget sessions that we can come up with a plan to reduce and find, typically we've got $1 million that we're able to allocate as a commission into things that are priorities. So hopefully we can have those discussions in the future budget times. This is a classic example why. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor?
Chair recognizes the Administrator.
So there is $11 million allocated for you to be able to do that through the American Rescue Plan, and so these funds would definitely qualify, but it's really as simple as versus having a dollar amount. If there's something additional that you want in the budget, consensus amongst the commission and give us direction.
Thank you for that. Okay. All right. We will, lest there be anyone else to speak on the budget. All right. Chair recognizes the Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I just wanted to emphasize exactly what the administrator just said about leaving this pretty much out of the budget and looking at it for American Rescue Plan. Any amount over the $50,000 we already give them. So is that what you're saying, Mr. Administrator?
Well, I'm saying you could do it that way, or you can say, hey, is this an American Rescue Plan project? or is there a way for us to leverage American Rescue Plan dollars and reduce that $11 million down by 50 or 100,000 and provide it to them to offset certain costs? I wouldn't do it to buy a building, but you could basically say, hey, here's a certain amount to be able to deliver services that you can utilize over the next few years, and they can use the funds that they save to pay off the building if you wanted to do it that way. But not just for this group, for any initiative or any purpose that the commission would like. If you say, hey, we want to add this into the budget, go find a way to do it. We would simply identify a way to do it and bring back how we propose to do so, and you can improve it and or move on. The same thing that you did with the engineering piece, which is a great example. You gave the direction, we identified it, made the adjustments, and brought it back. We would do that with any endeavor for which there's consensus within the commission.
Yeah, and that's my sentiment, that we probably should leave this for the American Rescue Plan, not the budget. So.
Thank you. All right, thank you. All right, the commission will stand at ease until 2 p.m.